Welcome to the Own Your Best Life podcast. I'm May Emson, your host, leadership and mindset coach. Here, we talk all things spiritual, mindset, business, leadership, and wellness for the modern seeker who wants to align their life with purpose and inspiration. We'll cover career changes, stress management, meditation, energy, intuition, and more. Each episode holds spiritual and practical tools to help you live a life of your wildest dreams without getting burnt out along the way. Ready to live a life on your own terms? This is the Own Your Best Life podcast. Welcome, friends, to episode number 154 of the Own Your Best Life podcast. So if you could have one wish fulfilled, what would it be? And one of the answers I get the most often is that people wish they could have unlimited amounts of money so that they can actually take more career risks. And when we think about risks, we usually think of losing something like money. Do risks mean that you're foregoing money? And not necessarily is my answer. So today's podcast is going to be on how do we actually make ourselves more valuable by taking intelligent career risks. So I've just finished creating a large body of work around careers, around developing yourself professionally. It will be released soon. And one of the biggest things that I notice is that you don't always know what's going to happen financially when you make certain decisions with your career. And most of the time, we can pinpoint certain careers that will make a certain range of money, but it's still up to you. It's still up to the situation you're in, what you make, and how much money you want. So if you find this idea of taking risks to be unpalatable, I want to welcome you to the club. This idea that, certain high risk or highly intense careers create the most financial reward is often not very exciting for people. I personally don't love gambling. It feels like a waste of money and time to me. Sure, I get the idea that there's the thrill and the experience of betting and just being in that environment. But my idea of a good time is getting something I enjoy or doing something good for myself for the time and the money that I spend. So for example, if I pay money for food and I eat it, I am enjoying it, or I'm getting some really great benefit, right, nutritionally from it. But wondering if I'm going to make money when I know the house always wins in Vegas is not enjoyable to me. But I do find that there is a place where our odds are better than in Vegas. And it is our work, it is our career, it is our lives. While you and I will never be perfect, and we will always be failing at something at some point, you also have the ability to increase our value, to increase your value to the people you work with, to the organizations that you're part of, to your clients, to your community. And in the first tier of our careers, we are actually just spending a lot of time just figuring out, what do people care about? What do organizations care about? What do our clients care about? What do people in our communities care about? What do our families care about? What does our partner care about? And then how do we actually solve those problems? How do we address what they care about and do those things? And we get paid to solve problems. We solve the problems people have. And for those of you who don't want any problems at work, right? You might be like, well, I don't want problems. I want you to know this is a good thing. Problems mean you get paid to make money because problems exist. So to a certain degree, we want the problem, especially if you have a reputation for solving problems. You will find bigger problems and better problems to solve. And you will make your mark as that person who gets things done. So the next tier of your career usually becomes becoming really good at what you do. And this is where many people come to see me. They've become really good at what they do. but they don't really love what they do, or they don't love the way they're doing it. And they don't just want to be the person telling people what to do, or they want to be the person not doing all the things anymore. But wherever they are, they see that their growth is somewhere else. They see that they want to have progress, but they want it to be in a different place that actually matters to them more. And when you get really specific with where you're going and what you want to do, you are taking on more risk in your career. When you're in the beginning and you're just saying, I will do whatever and whenever, that is a way of just reducing risk. I will do any work for anyone. But many of you are at this place where you're defining what industry you want to play in, what function you want to be in more specifically. Things that will make you more of a generalist will be the things that were probably in your past. And now you're thinking, how do I specialize even more? How do I become more of a specialist? And this is a risk because you don't just say anymore that you can do everything. You start to say, this is what I can do really well. And this is what I don't do. You start to realize what you're not so good at. And you spend time doing those things that you're not so good at on the path of becoming better at the things you want to be good at. And when you start to do those things that you're not so good at, it becomes apparent, especially if you're moving into something that is different than what you're doing today. It becomes apparent that you're not as skilled because in comparison to what you're an expert at, the difference is much bigger. So many times you will feel this feeling of, I know what perfect or amazing looks like, and it just hurts me so much to not be able to do it that way. So many of us have some version of reality of this idea of what life is supposed to be like that is very different than the reality that we're living. And I'm going to tell you that reality always wins. So in this place where you're thinking of making a switch, you will have that feeling of a shock. Like, I want to do this to that degree. I might have seen someone do it, but I see where I am now and I feel like it's huge. And that gap feels enormous, especially if you've already become really good or known to a certain level of doing something with a certain level of expertise. It's going to feel like a shock, right, to your identity. So you're going to have to create a vision. The reason for this is there's a time in your life when you realize that you're not just getting specific, you're diving into places where you don't have very much experience, but, and this is the big but, or the big and, you want to excel in it. So here I am at this precipice. I feel like I want to dive in. I want to, for example, when I was thinking of going in, becoming a coach, I was thinking, okay, I want to do this thing, but I don't have a lot of experience doing it. And what had to drive me there was, what do I want to be really great at? What matters here is not how good you are, but how much of a talent this is for you and how much you want to excel in this area. So that's a gap. I think a lot of people just think, I just want to be great, but they don't actually look at why they could be great at it with some additional work, with lots of practice, with this, sense of continuous learning and improvement. It's not always just anything. Usually there are certain clues in your life that will indicate that this is a thing. So for me, coaching came because I started seeing a lot of patterns of the way I was always, the things that I was always interested in, the topics that I was interested in, the kind of problems I was always trying to solve, and the angle that I was trying to solve them through. I would think, I would use my mind, I would be curious about why people did a certain thing the way they did, and I would see a lot of patterns. And what I noticed was that so much of that was untapped, so much of that was unsaid. And a lot of the feedback that I got over time was, I actually saw this recently, which made me so mad, but also very glad too. But I was cleaning out my room from my mom's house, and I was looking at some papers that were from this class that I took that was one of, my most impactful classes in undergrad, and it was called The Examined Life, right? So in this place, I remember the cover. I opened up the folder and I saw what was in here, and what was written on there was this first page that had, some pretty high marks. And it was basically a summation of the entire course. And it said, great work. You're a really good thinker. I wish I had called on you more in class. And I just remember thinking, I didn't know then that my thinking here was something that was valuable to anyone. And so many times the things that we feel are these career risks are because we don't think of ourselves as valuable. We don't think of our ideas as valuable. We don't think that some of those innate questions or ideas that are within us are of value. And we place so much importance on what we think other people are valuing. And that also is a house of cards, because I'm sure, as you know by now, what other people's thoughts are and what their concerns are aren't even true for them always. And so here we are trying to build upon other people's external validated ideas that they've picked up from external validated ideas. And they might not even be the kind of role model or people we want to be in our lives, in the way that we want to live, yet we're living by those standards. So I just want to offer to you that when I think about these risks, they are these inherently present things that just takes you going to your edge to get to. So I knew for me that coaching was a thing, and I continue to find patterns that have indicated that this was the case. I'm continuously surprised that I'm essentially the same person, more developed in certain ways, but I'm essentially the same person that's had the same ideas and interests and ways of thinking that obviously have shifted and grown. But I've always been curious about this. I've always been passionate about it. It's always been something that has really stuck with me. So the idea of excelling is not something that's just a fantasy. It's this idea of I enjoy the process. I enjoy the process of learning about this topic. So when you think about things that you're looking for a vision towards, you're thinking of things that you want to excel in, things where you want to be best in class at what you do, things that where maybe you're not starting as early, or maybe you have less experience than other people in these areas, but you're standing on a strong foundation of talent and of expertise. So I started seeing, here's all the talent, here's all the expertise I've had, all the years spent coaching individuals on performance management in a host of different settings, like every different kind of setting you can imagine. The years developing business acumen, right? So these are all things that go together. And I also knew how good I want to be. And so I remember this book that I picked up called It's Not How Good You Are, It's How Good You Want to Be. And you can go find the book, but for me at least, the title of this book was more inspirational than the contents. And I just remember that title because it inspires me to do the hard things. The hard thing when you start out is not being good at something. It's like asking for help. Asking for help was one of those hard things because asking for help presupposes that maybe you don't have every answer under the sun, that you might not be that good at something yet. And so people who have a vision, though, and are willing to work hard and intelligently towards that vision are not afraid to ask for help. Or not so afraid. They might still feel that feeling of like, I can't believe I have to do this, or that I'm reaching out. They do it. When you don't have a vision, you may not be willing to take career risks because reality and your desire are in the status quo. They are very close together. Visions actually close the gap between risks and reality. So I actually think that working towards a vision is the most pragmatic thing you can do to protect your money-making potential and to also expand it as well. The people who are only focused on maintaining status quo rarely are the people who are trying to advance themselves, they advance the organization, they advance their thinking. They're not as engaged always in the what ifs and how could we questions versus protection. How do I just maintain? So when you think about, okay, well, I don't necessarily want to be like that. I don't want to just be in protection mode. I want to be in expansion mode. I want to be in that place where I'm taking intelligent career risk. What would that look like? So start to marinate on this idea. What career risk would you have to take in order to be even more valuable in your career? Would that be to actually set some targets that feel hard to reach and then work towards meeting them? Would it be to do less and focus on delivering what you have at the highest level? Is it doing the thing that you're not so great at yet and actually learning more about that topic? What's the thing that makes you squirm a little bit inside? Right? That's the thing. So a risk is only a risk if there is a possibility of a loss of reputation, loss of income, loss of a job, right? So maybe you fail, maybe you never recoup the investment, maybe you don't do this new thing well. So I don't want you to pretend that there is no risk. I also don't want you to just do things that will risk everything for the sake of taking a risk. I want you to take intelligent risks that make you more valuable. So what I mean is this: most people think that they need to, do everything under the sun in order to be outstanding. But most people miss setting themselves apart and becoming outstanding by a small measure. They overshoot and then they have a massive failure. So instead of like overshooting just a little bit and winning by that amount, they're trying to, burn themselves out before the race has even finished. They're like halfway through and they're done. So what you're trying to do is pace yourself, right? This is such a good analogy because I work so much with people on burnout and lifestyle and well-being. But this idea of almost pacing yourself towards a finish line, but keeping you just enough at the edge where you're trying to beat your own record, you're trying to make yourself sweat a little bit, and a little bit of breathlessness is a good thing here, but you're not so far out that you're going to completely miss it. They say that the last mile is never crowded. And my thought is you don't have to actually go that entire mile. You can go 1 foot or even 1 meter to set yourself apart from other people and to set yourself apart from just who you were yesterday. And another foot analogy here is thinking about 1 foot on solid ground and 1 foot somewhere else. So what is the 1 foot risk, 1 foot ahead of the game, 1 foot a little bit further than you would have gone, 1 foot on solid ground and 1 foot in thin air, finding the next place to land? What is that thing? So I'm going to give you some examples. There are many, many, many that I've taken. And I know for you, you probably can start to think through and find them for yourself. So I'm just going to give you some examples. So one of them is I've taken roles that I have no experience with, but I feel supported in. I'm giving you the but in here because I want to show you that this is the intelligent portion. This is the mitigation portion of the risk, not just go and do things and not think about what some of the consequences might be. I've worked in industries that I've never worked in before, but I had access to industry knowledge and experts. I've worked for people who are really challenging, but also worked on depersonalizing it. I've posted on LinkedIn and social media consistently for years now, where people could see and gasp. They can judge even, right? Which was one of my biggest fears. And I don't expect approval. I've launched a podcast, which you're listening to now. So that was one of my risks. But I create focus content for clients. I don't just create anything and talk about all the things. And it's not random. I've gone back to school, but when I did that, I took out loans and I tried to figure out what parts in my life I wanted to have more experiences in and pay more money, but other parts that didn't matter to me as much. I actually left jobs and took pay cuts, but they were not beneath my non-negotiable amounts. I've made career changes, but when I did that, I kept building upon the strengths that I already had. I've said no to promotions so that I could deepen my expertise, but I then worked to exceed the expectations so that I could still be making progress, even if I'm staying in the same role. I've left toxic work environments, but also worked on myself and how I was part of co-creating that experience at the same time, right? So in the process of me leaving, I still think, well, I'm the one who co-created this experience. How do I not co-create this again the next place I go? I've said yes to projects that I've never done before, but I made sure that it was not at the expense of my core body of work and what I know I can deliver on and what I know I can do. I've launched things like, for example, retreats that are financially heavier of a load, but made the financials work or were willing to take the decrease in margins temporarily for the impact of the work and the commitment I have to the vision. I've started my own business and made investments into that. I probably spend more on my personal development than most individuals. So that is a huge benefit to me and to my organizations and to the people and the clients that I worked with. And in order to do that, I've also kept up with corporate work too. So each of these things made me more valuable, from no experience to experience in projects, in industries, careers, businesses, from one stream of income and no business to making money in businesses that I started and multiple streams of income. And even though I didn't superficially want to do any of these things, right? Because they're more work, I did. I wanted to keep doing the easy thing, which is status quo. And I also knew, that there comes a time when you just know that it's in your gut somewhere, or sometimes it's in your chest, where it's just time to make a move. You get that feeling that it's uncomfortable, but it's not uncomfortable like uncomfortable. I'm just scared, but I'm comfortable of staying. So the pain of staying is becoming greater than the pain of making a move. And you just don't want to risk everything in the process. And the good news is that you don't. And if you work with me, especially, you won't. And this is why I'm so passionate about the work that I do. For the longest time, I thought I had to make these huge sweeping changes that would upend my life for my life to feel on fire again. When I felt like I wasn't being supported at work, when I felt like I was losing trust in the organizations I was working in, when I was feeling disengaged, burned out, tired, like I was doing all the things. And I felt like I was missing out on family time where I could be spending time with these two little girls that were still so little. So it just felt like there was so much that was at stake. And it wasn't the case that I had to make huge sweeping changes. Yet when I thought that's what was needed, I felt so stuck. And I knew I was responsible for not just me, but my family as well financially. So I didn't want to be in a place where I took risks that I couldn't come back from. And that's not everyone's reality, but it was for me. And perhaps if you're listening, you might feel that way too, whether it's by choice or by design. you want to and need to make money to live, to support yourself, and to be here and to provide for other people. And so each time I did all of these things, I had to make it all work with my current workload, with my current responsibilities, with my current demands. And it was a risk to show up more boldly and do things I didn't know how to do. I know everyone feels like, well, of course you take those risks, right? I'm intensely aware that it may look like I just knew how to do all these things, but I didn't. I just like to be thrown into many different industries and being asked to be an expert in every one and having that feeling of self-doubt come. But it's not the case. I really didn't. And I cared a lot about what other people thought. I cared a lot about what people thought about me. I spent a lot of time working in just whatever places I was already at, let alone taking on more. That seemed very overwhelming and very hard to do for me. I didn't ever feel like I had a lot of time or money just sitting aside to make all these things work. We were still paying back loans, or we were taking out loans, or I was investing more than I was making. So every time I lost money and time. Yet there's always that dip, and then it comes back, my friend. I'm telling you, the world gives to the people who give. So if you're giving of your time and energy towards a cause and an impact and a vision that you intensely care about, you will at some point recoup that investment. The risk, right, that you take on is not just financial, it is emotional too. So I want you to consider that sometimes it's taking an emotional risk, even though you know that perhaps there is a financial reward that could be had. And even that risk feels really big. And I knew that the risk I was taking, I would gain things back from, because these were intelligent risks. You could, hear them. And obviously in hindsight, it seems like good risks to be taking. And I knew I would make it back from not everything, but some of the things. And I knew that they would have outsized returns, but they would only have outsized returns if I got the return, if I kept going, and if I didn't just put all my eggs in one basket. And I knew the skill that I was working on was refining how I make decisions and how I take risks. The more decisions I make, the more risks I take that are intelligent, then the more and more value that I can start bringing, adding, and then delivering upon. So this is a skill, to not be afraid of risks, but to mitigate them, to not think about things as just all or nothing, but to find that middle ground. What makes you scared, but also excited? That's a career risk to ponder taking. And maybe it's talking about what you want next and why. And even that can feel scary. So this is a very personal process. Just know that your risk isn't the same as someone else's, even though they generally fall into several buckets and categories that I work with people in. We are all humans. We are all facing in our day-to-day inherent risks. And I think of them as inherent opportunities for us to show up a little bit more boldly. And the only difference is that you're used to all the risks that you're currently taking. And these new ones are just out there. They're out there for you to take. There's so much value for you to be adding right now in the world, especially when people are worried about recession, about losing their jobs. This will make you more valuable, and more value is more money and more protection against all the things that we're worried about. So it is the one thing you can take advantage of and control over, is these intelligent risks. And it's not about keeping what you have and protecting everything. It's about knowing that you can always go out there and get what you need from the world. And getting what you need is the topic for our next group coaching call. So if you are into all of this, you will love coaching. Spiritual Achiever Coaching is for the seeker who has real life, practical questions, demands, and concerns, and also some vision and magic that they want to infuse in their life, and they want to go after it. They want to feel better about living their life, and they want to feel like they're making choices and trusting themselves that they know what they want next. And if you have some ideas about what you want and you need help figuring out that next step in your career, how it is to work more efficiently, how to make some of those big decisions between life and work, coaching is for you. And our next call is going to be on asking for what we need and getting what we need from the universe, from the material world. I'm going to bring in some practical tips, some mindsets, some energetic principles that I think you'll really resonate with. And if you want to learn more, you can schedule a consultation at www.mayemson.com/contact. I will see you guys there. I cannot wait. Have a good rest of your week. Bye now. Thanks so much for joining us this week on Own Your Best Life. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, can you please rate and review on iTunes? I would so appreciate it. Share it with a friend, take a screenshot of it, and tag @MayEmson. This helps continue to get the word out. For more show notes and resources, check out www.mayemson.com. You'll have all the links to everything you heard here today. Thanks so much for listening. It's time to own your best life.